You're with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
Nine minutes after 9 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the Clement Manyathela show on this Tuesday, the first day of April. Some people often like playing around April Fool, so no games today, please. Thank you for being with us here on 702. I hope you're well this morning. We're coming to you live this morning from the Sandton Convention Center, where the Council for the Built Environment, which is an entity of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, is hosting the inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit, brought to you by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. In fact, definitely not a doctor, but Mr. Dean McPherson will deliver the keynote address here at the summit. So they will be exploring strategies here for optimizing asset life cycles, using public-private partnerships and ensuring equitable infrastructure investments. So they'll be talking about infrastructure audits, the need to promote ethical governance. They'll be looking at innovative measures for effective asset management, property management, and green social infrastructure, while also maximizing its commercial value for public good. So we'll have a few stakeholders from this summit sometime this hour. But as always, we start with the 702 open line on 011-883-0702. If you prefer to send us a WhatsApp voice note, you can do that on 072-702-1702. What on earth is going on in Parliament? So we have been scrambling this morning, trying to record as many interviews as possible. You know why? Because there's an important meeting happening at 9 o'clock. In fact, as we speak right now, this is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's a meeting that is expected to finalize a report on the fiscal framework and revenue proposal in preparation for it to be tabled and voted on in the National Assembly on Wednesday. Now, there is no deal yet between the ANC and the DA, which means getting into this meeting at 9 o'clock without a deal is going to have consequences. It may end up in the meeting not adopting a report. It may end up in a meeting that doesn't adopt the report, and ultimately then there's no budget that's going to be passed on Wednesday. So there are consequences to this, which is why the DA announced yesterday, and in fact I said to a colleague of mine, I tweeted this as well, I said to a colleague of mine that I think the DA is announcing because the DA announced yesterday that they're going to be holding a press briefing this morning at 8:30. And I said to my colleague, I actually think the DA is trying to put pressure on the ANC. They're trying to put pressure on the African National Congress, which is expected to hold its own briefing this morning at 9 o'clock. Fikile Mbalula expected to speak about what happened in the NEC meeting, which will include discussions around the budget. Now, the DA has since indicated, in fact, let me start with a tweet that John Steenhuisen put out earlier today, right? John Steenhuisen tweeted this morning. So after they announced that they're going to have a press briefing at 8:30 this morning, the next thing we see John Steenhuisen tweeting and saying that, we are not going to actually support this budget unless there's actually an agreement on the table. And he tweeted, and I quote here, "Time is almost up. Last night, the ANC refused to finalize an agreement on growth and spending reforms endangering the GNU. The DA will oppose the budget unless and until a written agreement is reached." This is what John Steenhuisen tweeted at around 7:10 in the morning. Again, this was to put pressure on the ANC, I believe, because I've really watched how the DA negotiates, right? Now, then 8:30 comes, the DA cancels its briefing and says, we're cancelling this briefing until further notice. And I've been asking myself, what is the ANC's backup plan? And because having had a conversation with the ANC this morning, and I'll play you an interview of the ANC chief whip, the interview I did with him, Dumiseni Ntulu's the ANC chief whip. He seems to be showing a middle finger to the DA. He seems to be saying we're focusing on smaller parties now. There's nothing to talk to the DA about because the DA doesn't really want to move away from the demands that they made, which you heard on the show yesterday from Karabo Khakhau. So what is the ANC's backup plan if the smaller parties that it consulted said no? I mean, Musi Maimane said no. ActionSA said no, we're not going to support the 0.5 percentage VAT hike. So what is the ANC's backup plan unless those parties are politicking? And I heard from someone this morning who is higher up that don't be surprised when the smaller parties reconsider their positions and they come work with the ANC and the DA is just booted out. So I don't know where we find ourselves, but I think there are consequences here. I said to you yesterday that if we do not pass budget, if government cancels the proposed raids because there is no support, there are consequences. This would necessitate deep cuts in spending, including on health and education. So should this budget not be approved by Parliament, Section 29 of the Public Finance Management Act then comes in, because at least it allows the finance minister to authorize departments to spend 45% of their previous allocations. But the problem with that act is that that money that will be spent will be on essential items like salaries. New spending programs will not be allowed until government then approves budget. So there are major consequences here, and we mustn't downplay that. And I want to hear your thoughts on how do you think the GNU must move forward here? Must the ANC and the DA just cut ties? Because clearly they're not seeing eye to eye. I'll play you an interview I did with the DA as well this morning, because the DA says, well, we have realized now that there are two factions in the ANC. There's one faction that really wants this deal and wants the GNU to work with the DA. There's another faction that actually wants to see the DA booted out. And I'm beginning to believe that, because why then is Mdumiseni Ntuli telling us one thing and saying that we're focusing on the smaller parties, and then you hear from the DA telling us that, oh, the president and John Steenhuisen are meeting this morning, unless that's also a lie and used as a tactic. I don't know how you see it. I'd like to hear from you on 011-883-0702. Send me a WhatsApp as well on 072-702-1702. What should happen now? What should happen right now? Because there's a meeting this morning as we speak. There must be a fiscal framework that is approved, that must be tabled in Parliament so that there can be a vote on Wednesday. If this one step doesn't go well and doesn't get the approval of the majority in that committee, then forget about the voting on Wednesday. Let's talk on 011-883-0702. What I'm going to do at 10 o'clock is bring in the Finance Committee Chair, Joe Masangwani, who's going to explain to you the process that will be unfolding today. And again, explain to you the consequences of this one, the first step of this process not going through. What are the consequences on budget? What are the consequences on the vote? And ultimately, what are the consequences on spending plans by this government in this fiscal year? At 11 o'clock, we're going to do our World of Work feature. Today, we'll be discussing how to recover from a bad interview. What mistakes are often made and how do you remedy that? We're going to wrap up the show at 11:30 with our health and wellness feature. And today, we're discussing how to identify and recover from a nervous breakdown. That's the show coming up over the next 3 hours.
Clement Manyathela, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856
92.7
and 106 FM.
All right, I'm going to go straight to your calls in a moment on 011-883-0702. I'm going to start just quickly with this conversation, just to give you some context of the scramble happening in Cape Town in Parliament this morning. You've got the president trying to meet with John Steenhuisen to rescue the situation. You've got the ANC still meeting with the smaller political parties, so that by the time this meeting that is supposed to have started at 9 a.m. this morning is concluded, at least there's some agreement between the ANC and the smaller parties. Take a listen to Mdumiseni Ntuli, what he told me a couple of minutes ago as we pre-recorded this chat with him. He is the chief whip of the ANC in Parliament. Ndu, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and how are you?
Good. So there was a briefing that was scheduled this morning by the Democratic Alliance to give us an update on what is the outcome of their negotiations with you. The leader of the DA has since posted on social media, on Twitter, that the DA will oppose the budget unless and until a written agreement is reached. From your side as the ANC, can you confirm whether or not an agreement has been reached?
No, we don't have any particular agreement that we have reached with the Democratic Alliance. Nor have we been working on any ANC-DA exclusive agreement. The ANC set up a team to engage with different political parties, which we have done successfully. From where we are very excited. We are very comfortable with the fact that the areas of divergence have all been reduced to one issue and one issue in only, which is the 0.5% VAT increase. And that is where we are with the rest of the political parties. The DA has been engaging us through the media, indirectly through the portfolio committee submissions, and of course with a long list of issues that they release to the public as their demand to support the budget. And we've been clear from the onset that this budget is not going to be about what the DA wants. It's going to be about what all of us who are represented in Parliament are able to discuss and find consensus on. And that is where we are at the moment.
Okay, so I interviewed a member of the DA Federal Executive yesterday who said you, as the ANC, had written to the Democratic Alliance to say, come back to the drawing table, we want to negotiate with you again. And you sent them a document on Saturday where you were making concessions to a number of demands that the DA made. Are you suggesting that that was a lie I was told yesterday?
I don't know about that document, Clement. I am the chief whip of the ANC, as you know, and I was assigned by Luthuli House to lead the team of the ANC that is negotiating with all political parties. So I haven't signed or sent any document to the DA. The first meeting we had with the Democratic Alliance was yesterday because the whole of last week was not easy for us to find a common time for the meeting. And when we met yesterday, we painstakingly went through each of the issues they are raising. We explained our position on those matters, and we said to them, unless if they are willing to move away from some of the demands, which have got nothing to do with the budget, expropriation, NHI, do away with the NYTA, give certain powers to the deputy minister. If you don't move away from those demands, there's no way we're going to have a consensus with you. What they are talking about as a submission and us conceding to anything, I don't know. Maybe you may ask them who exactly gave them that document, because I was in the meeting with them yesterday and I led and chaired that meeting and led the delegation of the ANC which negotiated with the TA yesterday.
Okay, yeah, that's quite interesting because, yeah, as I said, I was told yesterday by the DA live on this show that you guys made some concessions and you were about to find some agreement. And now that you're telling us you only started meeting yesterday, then really questions what they told us. What is your status with the talks with the smaller parties? You went to ActionSA, they've already said no to you. Do you know if they're reconsidering? Because what I'm hearing is that the talks between you and them are continuing, even though last week they had said, we're not going to support the budget.
The talks are continuing with all political parties, including ActionSA. And I must say that ActionSA is one of the parties that, to a very large extent, have been very reasonable in terms of the interventions they were proposing. And we are very optimistic that between now and 10 o'clock, we will find a consensus. And when I say we will find a consensus, I'm referring here to all parties in the GNU except the DA and few other parties in the opposition whom we've engaged with last week, including your EFF as well as the ActionSA. We are yet to see the ACDP and hear what is their take on the matter. But I'm quite comfortable, I'm quite confident that between now and 10 o'clock, we will secure a position that allows the portfolio committee to go through the fiscal framework in the way that is consistent with what we discuss with all other parties except the DA.
But the EFF has already said we're not going to support a 0.5 percentage point hike. ActionSA said no last week, of course, unless they're reconsidering. If the EFF is not going to support you here, do you have some numbers? Of course, not including ACDP.
That is the reason, Clement, we are engaging with the ActionSA and other parties, and we've now narrowed it down areas of disagreement to, in fact, one point, that is a 0.5% VAT. We are now finding a solution on how best to handle that issue in such a way that it does not upset what has already been a consensus among all of us, that 95% of that budget is accepted except that 0.5 VAT hike. We are dealing with that matter. And as you know, in any case, this VAT hike is only coming to effect on the 1st of May. And between now and then, I can tell you that there would be consensus about how to get around it.
Okay. And what happens in the Finance Committee this morning? How critical is it that you somehow find support as the ANC? And I want to try get the listeners to understand what are the consequences here. If 10 o'clock comes and you still don't have enough numbers, and there are amendments that must be made to some of those bills that are going to be discussed in the Finance Committee, and there's no consensus, what are the consequences? Does that mean on Wednesday, when budget is tabled, then you don't have the numbers to support it and vote for it? So that is the conversation I had with Mdumiseni Ntuli. Towards the end there, his phone ended up dying. But I think we got the gist of the conversation. He seems to be suggesting that we're focusing on the smaller parties. We've never made any concessions to the DA. The DA, on the other hand, is trying to create an impression here that, there are two factions here. There's one led by the president that wants the DA in this GNU, and there's the other, presumably led by Mdumiseni Ntuli, who, by the way, Mdumiseni Ntuli is the one who's leading the negotiations, who says, we told the DA that if you're going to stick to your demands, we're not going to be able to move forward. Let's go to your calls now on what your thoughts are. Obakeng, let's start with you in Beckersdale. Good morning. Shop, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Obakeng.
You know, Mr. Clement, it is high time that now the ANC must cut ties with PA. Remember, those people, they are beneficiaries of apartheid. Now, they don't want to hear anything ANC. Now it is high time that the ANC must call all these small parties, the likes of EFF, MK, ACDP, Al-Jama, the Party, then inform this union. Those people, they benefited a lot from apartheid. Now they want ANC to dance. Whatever that they want the ANC to dance. Now it is high time that the ANC can't still allow for that.
All right, Obakeng in Beckersdale, thank you for your thoughts. Sabelo in Jabulani, Soweto, what are your thoughts?
Yes, my thought also is the ANC. Actually, what I wish will happen about this deal between the ANC and the DA. The deal must not go well because now the ANC, they forget that they are no longer the majority party. They should listen to other small parties or to other parties, you see. But the ANC, they only want all the parties to hear their words only. And the ANC, they forget that they are letting this country down. You see, they are letting this country down. No, me, I don't want to lie to you. I wish ANC should go down. Yeah. That's what I think.
Right, Sabelo in Jabulani, thank you so much for your thoughts. Let's go to your WhatsApps on 072 702 1702.
Clemmy, good morning, man. Flores here from the Western Cape. Clemmy, definitely there will be massive and destructive consequences. But let me tell you, politicians doesn't necessarily sit there to represent the normal guy on the street. They're all there to strong arm whoever they can strong arm, just to be in a position of power and to try and see who will blink first. But this is not good, man. This is not good. But it also depends on which side of the perimeter you are. But me, definitely, South Africans, public, we need to stand up and say enough is enough of all these grown adults that think that they can do as they please. Have a good show. Bye-bye.
Good morning, Clement. Pat here from Spayview. You know, the furore here is DA is going to capitalize on saying, no, we don't agree because they have advantage coming the next elections, you know? And ANC, it is on disadvantage for the next elections. So DA, there's no way they will withdraw from the GNU because they got advantage.
Kusas, you calling us from Midrand. Good morning.
Good morning. Clement, trust the ANC at your own peril. Trust the DA at your own peril. These people are going to reach a deal very soon. ANC is that uncle who loves to look good in public when in fact of doing the right thing. The ANC was supposed to put down in a lot of things that the DA wants. But look at Gauteng. Gauteng is stable in terms of government. They are running a majority government. What's stopping Ramaphosa from doing the same thing? So all in all, no, they are not far apart from each other. They will reach out. ANC will compromise. In fact, they've always been compromising. And the DA has nothing to compromise on. All they want is to take. So I'm suggesting with Clement, this sparring in public is neither here nor there. But they will definitely fight each other. All in all, I'm looking forward to make sure that the government keeps on continuing, but the ANC will got to compromise a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, Kustas, let me tell you this. I just interviewed also just before we came on Athol Trollip, who is the parliamentary leader for ActionSA. And you know what he told me? He says that they are going to present a reversal condition on fiscal framework to protect all South Africans. So they're going to make an important recommendation in this finance committee this morning, which the ANC is going to support. What that means is that we may find a situation where ActionSA then joins the GNU, and then with all the other smaller parties, because I know Rise Mzansi wants more positions. You think Mmusi Maimane is not going to say yes to a ministry position if he gives his vote on this one? So if the DA is out, there are so many ministerial positions that are out for grabs, and ActionSA wants that. The Mmusi Maimane will want that. Rise Mzansi will want that. So for me, this is shocking that ActionSA is going to make a recommendation this morning, which is going to be supported by the ANC, which is something that would have been supported by the ANC had it been tabled by the DA. But the DA, because came with all their demands, some of which had nothing to do with the budget, now the ANC said would rather focus on the smaller parties.
Your brother Clement, if the ANC does that, it would be a stroke of a genius. You know why? Because the country will be stable. I can tell you right now, these smaller parties are working. I mean, look at how they've done at Gauteng, how they're doing in Pretoria, that's ActionSA, that's Rise Mzansi at Gauteng government level. They are working. They're not playing to the gallery of the public. They want to work South Africa to work. So if the ANC can strike that deal without the DA, it would be a stroke of a genius. But let me tell you this, the DA will rather bend its knees than to let go. So at some point, they will have to give in. But I like your idea, Clement. ActionSA is one part that the ANC can listen to because they are humble and they are not arrogant. And they don't present negative intention to the ANC.
Got it. Kustas and Midrand, thank you so much for your time.
The Clement Manyathela Show, live from the Public Works and Infrastructure Summit, brought to you by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure on 702.
Right, it's 22 minutes now before 10 o'clock. As we've been telling you, we are live from the Sandton Convention Center. This is where the Council for the Built Environment, which is an entity of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, is hosting the inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit. And with me now, I've got Dr. Msizi Miyeza, who's the CEO for the Council for the Built Environment. I'm going to have a quick chat with him, and then I'm going to go back to your calls and WhatsApps as well. Dr. Miyeza, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Thank you for the opportunity.
So this is the first ever Public Works and Infrastructure Summit. What necessitated the hosting of such a conference? What are you hoping to achieve?
No, I think it's been long coming because you'll recall in 2022, President Ramaphosa spoke about the country's inability to execute infrastructure because we lack required skills, especially in the built environment. So when Minister Dean McPherson made a statement or when I was addressing Parliament about turning South Africa into a construction site, our view was, as a built environment, which is a regulator of the professions in the built environment, what should be our contribution? We then conceptualized this idea that perhaps there is a need for us to convene the industry to say, let's move away from the slogan and say, in order for you to execute infrastructure and drive investment as per the president's announcement and turn South Africa into a construction site, we must speak from the same baseline, i.e. have the correct database. Secondly, have professionals understanding their responsibility in the bigger scheme of things. So this conference, really, our intention is not to have long speeches. It's about developing a practical implementable plan that will then address the areas that we put forward in the commissions, i.e. how do we deal with resilient infrastructure, how do you deal with social housing infrastructure, how do you deal with gap funding, property financing, and those are some of the issues that we'll be discussing. So it's really about practicalizing the announcement made by both President as well as the Minister.
Well, what about the capacity we have or don't have? Do we have that relevant capacity to take us to where you're envisaging? I mean, you look at, because normally when you look at our infrastructure capacity, either there's no capacity or we're not capacitated enough for it. So what are the plans to get us there?
Look, I'll tell you one thing. One of the things that we've made in the previous administration even, we accepted that perhaps capacity requirement might be the area that we focus on. But secondly, through the strategy that we put forward to the MINMEC, which is a minister and MECs of public works in the country last year, we developed a strategy that will then deal with issues of capacity. Let me just give you scary statistics. In the built environment, we've got about 60,000 odd registered professionals across disciplines. Out of the 60,000, I mean, the bulk of them is the aging profession, to be honest. But secondly, there is a high number of young professionals, graduates, who comes from different schools in the country with built environment professions who are stuck as candidates. If you can convert those young graduates to become PR, you are then able to build the capacity that is required for the state. But for you to go through that process, you'll know that there are three phases. One, you must be academically trained through a university process. Secondly, you must have experience. And thirdly, you must be competently assessed by a regulatory body. And I think that's a longer process. Usually, I mean, if I were to give you an example, to become a PR eng or a PR civil engineer, it takes about 10 years of investment. Because if you start investing from grade 11, for you to become a professionally registered person, you actually need to invest 10 years.
Are those professions here? Those professionals?
We're very intentional about who we invite. The professionals are here.
All right.
So we'll be hearing from them.
Great. Dr. Msizi Miyeza, thank you so much for making time for us. He's the CEO for the Council for the Built Environment. It's 17 minutes now before 10 o'clock. Let's go back to your WhatsApp voices.
Your voice.
Your station.
Your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
Morning, Clement. You know, the DA is behaving like a side chick. They will scream, they will cry, they will demand, but the man is going to go and do what he wants. They will throw their toys around, the man is going to demand, is going to eventually do what he wants. Because the side chick always wants to stay in a relationship, no matter what. That's what the DA is. They are just a side chick who are desperate for the blue lights, who are desperate for relevance. They are going to stay in the GNU, whether they like it or not. And the ANC is going to continue doing as it pleases. And they know that the DA is never going to leave the GNU.
Time now that this portrayal of the West End called DA, a representative of the USA, for that matter, get booted out. And that the ANC would actually find a way in consensus with these other small parties, including even your MKs and all of that. It is just high time. There is no any intent from the DA to represent a black nation, for that matter. So I think it's high time now that they put it out. Thank you.
You see, Clement, the demands of the DA are surprising because if you look at them, they actually have nothing to do with the budget. They take something from the outfield and want to use that in negotiating and all that. The laws they are talking about that they want repealed have been passed by the 6th administration. You see what I mean? And then now they want those to change so that they can support the budget. And we still have 4 years to go. What happens when a budget is to be approved next year? They can easily say, make John Steenhuisen a deputy president of South Africa, then we will support the budget. A lot of these demands are ridiculous. Jabu Chilwani.
Yeah, Jabu, thank you. Kenny, you're calling from Pretoria. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Clement, how are you, my man?
Sure, man, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment is the ANC and the other parties must never compromise on these four things. 1, the VAT. 2, the Bella Act. 3, the land issue. 4, I can't remember the fourth point. Because these are the things that actually will affect the Africans. Even in the near future, when the ANC compromise on the DA, on all those four things, although I have forgotten the fourth one, they will affect our kids in the near future. So
when you talk about the ANC, when you say the ANC mustn't compromise on VAT, what do you mean by that? You do know that if VAT goes ahead, it's going to affect you, right?
No, okay, right. VAT, I can say, they must consider the VAT. But the other things that the DA now is bringing on the table has got nothing to do with the budget.
All right, Kenny in Pretoria, thank you for your thoughts. Okay, here's that conversation with the DA, right? I played you a conversation with Ntumiseni Ntuli, who says, we've told these guys, if you come with those demands, we cannot move forward. In fact, we're focusing on the smaller parties now. Listen to what the DA said this morning when I spoke to them. Karabo, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning. Very good morning, Kevin. Good morning to your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Why did you postpone the media briefing this morning?
We were supposed to have concluded our conversations last night, and it's on the basis of that we said that we would have a press briefing today. That conclusion did not take place. And today, President Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen are meeting. I can confirm that is going to happen, and it is only Thursday conversation that we'll be able to communicate definitively. Because we obviously, even though we have agreed in our conversations, without a signature, whatever it is that we'll be communicating would be a speculation, and the ANC can come back and say, oopsie, nope, we don't agree anymore.
Are you saying that the president is meeting with John Steenhuisen this morning?
I am saying John Steenhuisen and the president are meeting today, yes.
Okay, but are they meeting this morning? And I'm asking that because there's a meeting scheduled at 9 o'clock, and these kind of agreements need to have been reached before that meeting in the Finance Committee.
You and I are on the same page, and altogether it's messy. Had the ANC agreed last night and had they concluded their conversations last night, then we wouldn't be having the scrum that we're having right now. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and I can't confirm a time for you right now when they are supposed to meet, but it is a matter of urgency. The last I checked right now, the president and John Steenhuisen were going to meet as a matter of urgency. They had moved towards each other.
When did you meet with the ANC? Because I spoke to Ntumiseni Ntuli this morning, who tells me that it's not true that they met with you guys before yesterday. He says the first meeting that they had with you guys was yesterday, and they made it very clear to you guys that if you're going to stick to your demands, then they are not going to move away, and they're going to continue their conversations and discussions with the smaller parties. But the impression I got from you yesterday when we spoke was that you and the ANC were somehow beginning to meet each other somewhere. Ntumiseni says that's not true.
Ntumiseni is not being honest. And quite frankly, I don't think we should even have a conversation about the factional politics of the ANC, because there are two ANCs, one that want to do this, the others want to move another way. What I think is important in a one person that we can have as a sober head writer is the president. And the president of the republic is the one that's going to be meeting with John Steenhuisen. They did send us responses to our demands. We did respond to them, and we have been corresponding. We did have a conversation. We were negotiating with our negotiating team, and they were giving us live updates as that was happening. So we were moving towards each other, pretty much at a point where the only thing that is missing is to sign on the dotted line. But obviously, as you would know, it's the nature of the beast that is politics. You could be agreeing on something now, and then in the next 5 seconds, there's something else that has come up altogether. And that is the balance that President Ramaphosa has to make, of being the Republic's president and being the president of an ANC that is divided and that is not united in their stance on how we're supposed to move here.
Yeah.
But the Democratic Alliance position remains the same, Kevin. If we were a ruling government, there would not be a 0.5% tax increase at all. It would be a 0% increase. And the alternatives that we put on the tables are still sober. They're still there that could be copied and pasted. And we wait to see what John Steenhuisen and President Ramaphosa say.
All right. Karabo Khakhau, DA, member of the Federal Executive, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much, Clement.
All right. So that's what the DA said just before we came on air. We recorded that conversation with them. And again, that's because there's so many meetings taking place this morning. So many of these politicians are locked up in meetings. We're told the DA leader is meeting with the president. There's that meeting of the Finance Committee as well, which we now know ActionSA is going to make a proposal, a recommendation that we reverse that 0.5 percentage tax increase. The ANC, we are told by ActionSA, is going to support that. What does that mean for the GNU? Musumani, you're calling from Kempton Park. What are your thoughts? Good morning.
Hi, Clement. How are you?
Sharp. Go ahead.
Yes. Actually, I'm just replying to the question that you imposed on one of your callers last year regarding the VAT. You asked the question of saying if the VAT increases will affect you and I. Then contrary to that, if the VAT does not increase, it will affect the social responsibility of government as far as the budget is concerned. That guy should have answered you, Clement. He failed to answer.
So what do you mean, Musopane? Please expand on that.
Yes, I'm saying to you, your question was that if the VAT increases, will affect you and I, which is true. But contrary to that question of yours that you imposed to him, if the VAT does not increase, it will affect the budget. Ultimately, it will still affect us, you and I, as far as the social responsibility is concerned.
Yes, it will, but unless, of course, the ANC comes up with other options. Like ActionSA this morning is going to table other options that can let the budget not contain the 0.5 percentage point hike, but also come up with ways that you can still find some revenue for government. That's what's going to be proposed. And it is possible. It's just a matter of political will to take the tough decisions.
No, I agree with that. Actually, I'm coming back from the doctor. I'm still sick. But I wanted to reply to that question. The guy should have responded to you and tell you that if the VAT does not increase, it will still affect the social responsibility. That's my argument. And I'll leave it at that.
No. Yeah, Musupani in Captain Park, thank you so much. You're right. If the VAT doesn't increase and there's no plan to find additional revenue for government spending, of course that's going to affect you because government spending on social programs is going to be impacted. But if the VAT doesn't increase, but there's actually a plan to get that additional revenue for government spending, then that solves the problem, doesn't it? It's 7 minutes now before 10 o'clock.
7:02 is live from the Sandton Convention Centre for the 2025 Public Works and Infrastructure Summit.
It's 4 minutes now before 10 o'clock. We're here at the Convention Centre where the Council for the Built Environment is hosting this inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit. And I want to bring in now here at our makeshift studio, Sikadi Payane, who is the CEO for the South African Institute for Civil Engineering. Sikadi, thank you so much for making time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for making time for me.
So let's start with the South African Institute of Civil Engineering. What is it and how does it assist in maintaining and sustaining the country's infrastructure?
South African Institute of Civil Engineering, also known as SAICI, is a 120-year-old organization. We consisted of about 15,000 civil engineers that we represent in the country. We are also a voluntary association linked with the Engineering Council of South Africa and the SACPCMP. How we link with maintaining the country's infrastructure is obviously we provide the engineers who are involved on a day-to-day basis within the country's infrastructure. We also do a lot of training programs for them, capacity building and the likes. We also produce an infrastructure report card every 5 years. The next installment of it will be in 2027, where we track the country's infrastructure and we audit it across various fields.
Yeah, and do we have enough civil engineers in the country to have sustainable infrastructure?
No, we do not. If we compare internationally to what South Africa has, we are quite deficient in the number of civil engineers that we have. We've also seen a lot of civil engineers who've immigrated, when there's a boost in the East and the likes, our skills being poached, if I can put it that way. So we are constantly trying to work with universities to ensure that the skills, stays within the country and that we can get a new batch of younger people, who can work on infrastructure projects.
What is the reason for them to leave? Is it competitive salaries? They get offered better salaries there as opposed to maybe in government here?
Yeah, I think so. Also the projects, like the world has opened up in the last 10 or so years, and the projects that have been opened up internationally for our engineers, and I mean, we have really sent a lot of our engineers internationally who work on that, and some are coming back slowly but surely to come and, give that skill back into the country. But I just think job opportunities are just great, and the type of project, the mega projects that you can work in internationally are, they're not really comparable.
Okay, one of the issues that the summit aims to explore is look at the strategies for optimizing asset life cycles. How do you think this can be achieved through civil engineering?
Firstly, is with planning, proper planning. I think previously, and what we've seen also with the infrastructure report card, is that maintenance is left as a by the way, and only given 3% of the budget from municipalities and national government and the likes. So if you plan for it in the beginning of a project and you can incorporate it as part of the entire project life cycle, that is how you can then take care of the maintenance aspects. We also do a lot of training around maintenance and ensuring that our officials are also skilled to be able to think in this manner. One of the projects that we just completed now is with COCTA, where they want to bring in this type of thinking already in the beginning of a project life cycle, in the tender documentation stage. So we're quite excited about that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Sikadi Payani, CEO of the South African Institute for Civil Engineering. That takes us to exactly 10 o'clock, time for the news. When we come back, we are going to continue this conversation we started on the 702 open line. And I know there's lots of calls that I didn't take, lots of voice notes I didn't get to. In the second hour, we're going to continue the 702 open line. I'm just going to bring in the interview that I told you about with ActionSA, where they explained to us that they're going to make a proposal this morning that reverses the VAT increase, and the ANC is going to support that, and we'll find out what that actually means. And then I'm going to continue with your calls as you react to what we're seeing develop this morning from Parliament.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app,
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the second hour of the Clement Manyathela show, live from the Sandton Convention Center this morning. As you've heard, we've spoken to some stakeholders here who are at this summit. That is the inaugural one, in fact, inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit. We're here, the Council for the Built Environment, which is an entity of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, is hosting this inaugural Public Works Infrastructure Summit. But what I want to do this hour is to continue with your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes, because I couldn't get to many of your calls in the previous hour because I was trying to get you up to speed with the latest in Parliament. There's that Parliament's Finance Committee meeting that is currently underway, and there was a lot of scrambling and moving around and lots of meetings happening just before that meeting, because the ANC needed to make sure that there is a deal in place. So I wanted to get you up to speed with that. That's why I played you lots of those interviews on the 702 open line this morning. So please give us a call on 011-883-0702 if you've got some thoughts. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. ActionSA's Athol Trollip, who's a parliamentary leader for the party, told us on the show that they, as ActionSA, will be tabling a recommendation to reverse the VAT increase, and that will be supported by the ANC. And I remembered that the ANC, Mtumiseni Ntuli, did say earlier on that ActionSA has actually been reasonable in their negotiations. But my question is, what does this then mean for the GNU? Because wasn't the DA asking for the same thing? Wasn't the DA also asking for a revision or some kind of reconsideration of this 0.5 percentage increase, except the DA wanted it in return for something else, in exchange of something else. So they said, if we give you these votes, then you're going to be able to give us something else. And this is what they were negotiating on. Those three things that Karabo Khakhau, who is the member of the DA Federal Executive, told us about yesterday. He mentioned the Expropriation Act. He said they must cancel, they must go back to Parliament and take away that nil compensation. Said it must be just and equitable. They spoke about the devolution of powers in the Western Cape. Remember that? They said that's part of their negotiations. They said that they want to be a bigger part of the economy and the management of the economy. So they want the Operation Vulindlela to be co-chaired by someone from the Democratic Alliance. Mtumiseni Ntuli tells us this morning, well, we told them that if they're going to come and stick to those demands, then they must go away because we're not going to be able to find each other. And then the messaging started changing towards ActionSA now, where now the ANC starts praising ActionSA for how reasonable they are. And then suddenly ActionSA comes and says, oh, we're actually going to make a recommendation for the reversal of VAT. And the ANC is going to support it. What an interesting development. And what I'll try to do this hour is maybe bring in my colleague Tsidi Madia to come and help us understand what's been happening behind the scenes, because that's what we have been observing. I want to go to your WhatsApp voice notes now on 0727021702. After that, I'm going to play you that conversation I had with Athol Trollip from ActionSA as he explains to us how they're going to be working with the ANC as they make this proposal in that finance committee that's currently underway. Here's what some of you have had to say on our voice note line.
Good morning, it's Jeannie speaking. I would just like to say, what history do you have, the ANC? I listen to the people talking and trying to break down the DA. We are trying to fix this country because it was it's broken. Everything, nothing's working anymore. The government is a government on their own. They just do what they want. Doesn't matter how much corruption there is. They stay in their positions and it just goes on. Somewhere this has got to stop. Just sit together with people that has got plans and that knows and that can check and see that things get run properly. This country can't go on like it is now. Save South Africa now, please. Think what you're doing and vote for the right people.
Good morning, Clement. I think, with regards to this ANC-DA alliance, it was always going to come to this, right? But what doesn't make sense that's coming out of it is the DA is all about the devolution of powers back to the provinces. But the ANC is against that aspect. I fail to understand why they're against the devolution of power back to the provinces, because surely we've tried this model of seeing how the national government runs things, and it just does not work, where there's a lot of inefficiencies, there's duplication. I mean, right now we have duplication between provincial and the municipalities in terms of certain things. So surely devolving power back to the provinces will make things more efficient. So I honestly think ANC also needs to sit and review some of its policies, because their policies, they've had 30 years to implement them, and not all of them have been effective. Some of them have actually been downright failures. This is Koketso from Joburg.
Hi, Clement. This ANC really think they are in charge of government as they used to be, throughout the past times. This is a GNU, and they can't just behave as if whatever they say must go, But we're watching them closely, and definitely votes are not going to go their way with these kind of things. The DA must fight, they must stay in there and work something out, but they must not leave.
All right, thank you so much for your WhatsApp voice notes. Let's listen now to Athol Trollip, who is a parliamentary leader for ActionSA, where he was announcing to us really what the plan of action is for the Finance Committee meeting, which just started now in Parliament. Mr. Trollip, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for your time, and hello to your listeners.
I want us to, I see that as ActionSA, you've just released a statement this morning saying that you will table a tax reversal condition on the fiscal framework to protect all South Africans. Is this part of the outcome of the negotiations that you've had with the ANC, whatever you'll be tabling today? Is it something that you spoke to the ANC about and agreed to?
Yes, absolutely. We believe that we can pass the fiscal framework. We've foregone a number of other important considerations that we had about the compilation of the budget. But we believe that we can find the required revenue and cut the unnecessary expenses to bridge the shortfall that is intended to bridge. So what we intend to do in the committee today is to table this recommendation that we instruct Treasury and the Minister to take representations from various stakeholders about finding the revenue shortfall and cutting unnecessary expenditure in order to balance the budget so that we can pass the budget when it is tabled in Parliament.
And what are some of those considerations you want the ANC to consider? Isn't it that in Parliament, especially now that they've negotiated with various political parties, those recommendations were made to them? Why must they be a separate process?
Well, because Treasury has insisted on sticking with the 0.5%, which we find anathema. We don't believe that we should be taxing the man in the street who is already struggling to make ends meet. We believe that there are other streams of revenue, like taxation, for example, and there are a lot of areas of expenditure that are wasteful that can be trimmed down to make up the shortfall, and that's the recommendation we're going to say to Treasury. We believe that we have ideas on how to find that revenue, and so do other political parties that we've been talking to, and that we are saying to Treasury, you've had a bash at it and it's not working. Take representations from us as stakeholders and then make a consideration within 30 days. That is the decision we have taken. It will go to the committee like that. Whether it receives support or not is neither here nor there, because that is our position that we've negotiated all along, and if things change, so be it.
Yeah, and the ANC, when I spoke to them this morning, they said, as ActionSA, you have been one of the parties that have been reasonable during these negotiations. When you told them that you will be tabling this recommendation, did they say to you that this is something they will support?
We wouldn't have put out that statement if we hadn't discussed that with the ANC. And we are reasonable, because what we don't want to see is any more uncertainty in this country, which will imperil our ratings, global ratings, and cause even more distrust in our economy and in our governance. We need to get this country working, and we need to address the plight of unemployed South Africans that are really battling to make ends meet.
Yeah, and Athol, I'm hearing that as the ANC and ActionSA, as ActionSA and the ANC, there are some positive talks that may end up in you as ActionSA joining this GNU. Are you about to join the GNU? Are you having those conversations with the ANC?
I can tell you categorically that all the meetings that I've attended, I have not been involved in any discussions about GNU or anything like that, because the GNU is still in place. This is not a transactional negotiation. This is a negotiation to pass the fiscal framework so that we can then consider the budget line by line and hopefully pass the budget sooner rather than later. We have never been involved in transactional politics. Otherwise, we would have joined the GNU last year in June. We chose not to for our own good reasons. And we are in the process of negotiating with the ANC about the budget and nothing else.
Right. Athol Trollip, ActionSA's parliamentary leader, thank you for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Turning South Africa into a construction site, growing the economy and creating jobs. 702, live from the 2025 Public Works and Infrastructure Summit.
It's 22 minutes now after 10 o'clock. We continue with your calls on 011-883-0702. WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. Sebastian, let's start with you. You're calling from El Dorado Park. What are your thoughts? Hi.
Hi, Clement, man. I'm just checking the numbers. The numbers are numbering. Clement?
Mm-hmm.
I can just check the numbers. Even if ActionSA doesn't join up with the ANC, they will sit on 201. That's all the small parties.
No. Wait. With just the small parties?
Yes. If you can go to last year's election results, ANC's got 159 seats, right? And the rest of the small parties, excluding the DA, Freedom Front Plus, ACDP, they'll end up on 201.
Wait. So you've included the MK party and the EFF in those numbers?
No, I haven't. I took them out. The 17 seats at the Inkatha Freedom Party said yesterday they'll join. They've got 17 seats. Patriotic Alliance got 9. United Democratic Front got 3. Rising Zanzi's got 2. World One SA got 2. African Transformation Movement got 2. Al Jamal's got 2. National Colored Congress got 2. And then there's 1 for the rest of the 3 parties. Seriously, just check it out.
Yeah. I did the numbers. Sebastian, I did the numbers many times. And for me, when I was calculating, ActionSA's 6 numbers are actually going to be quite crucial here. I do know that even with the Freedom Front Plus, the Freedom Front Plus may very well, my understanding is may very well also come through and support this. The ACDP is the only party that the ANC is unsure of, but I think they could find a way to sway them. Just give them a committee chair position there. That's probably something that they'll take in return for their vote. But let's see. I'm going to bring in Sidi Madia to help us as well, Sebastian. Maybe the numbers are numbering and I'm missing something.
Yes. Thanks, Clement. Great show. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sebastian in El Dorado Park. Are the numbers numbering? And is the DA prepared to walk away from this GNU? Here's the thing about the Democratic Alliance is they've got this thing where they always go, this is the red line. We will never do this if they don't do this. And then the ANC says, you're crazy, we're not going to do that. And then they come running back and say, oh, okay, sorry, we were playing, we're here, we're still here. They're going to start sounding ridiculous now. Either you become firm and you take a position and you stick to it, or be humble enough to say, you know what, we are not agreeing here, but this doesn't mean that we're going to walk away from the GNU. And I know as journalists, we're the ones that often ask this question, are you prepared to walk away? But often they've come and said, this is a red line for us. John Steenhuisen said that. Remember when Helen Zille was sending messages to the Fikile Mbalula during the negotiations for the GNU. Before I think this is just after the statement of intent was agreed to, the president was about to appoint his cabinet. And the DA said, if you don't give us these positions we're asking for, we can't do this. What did they do? They came back. They're part of the GNU. The president gave them the positions he wanted to give them. They took them. And then the Bella Act came. Helen Zille came on this show and said, that's a red line for us. If that happens, never. The Bella Act has been passed. The president signed it into law. Where are they? They're there. Oh, and then the NHI came and they said, no ways. NHI has been signed by the president. And what happened? They're still here. Expropriation Act came. They're still here. Now it's the budget. Every time you speak to them, this is it. We cannot continue like this. And I tell you, my friends, don't be surprised if the DA comes back to you sometime later today and they say, oh yeah, we have always been the matured party that wants to put South Africa first, so we're not going to walk away because that would lead South Africa to a path of destruction. Mark these words. The fact that they chickened out this morning and didn't continue with their press briefing at 8:30, which I still maintain. When they announced that briefing yesterday, they wanted to put pressure on the ANC because they didn't have their way. So they were like, let's announce this briefing so that the ANC gets scared that we're going to tell them we're not voting for this budget and they're going to run back to the negotiating table. The ANC didn't budge. That's why this morning, now they had to cancel that briefing because in that briefing they would have had to say, we're not going to support the budget. How do you serve in a government and you have not supported their budget that is supposed to push for the social programs and spending of the same government? If it's a red line for you, why are you still saying it? Doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. So what's the point of continuing with the GNU? Which is why now ActionSA has positioned itself as this reasonable smaller party that can negotiate. But also ActionSA is a political party. They want something in return. So don't be surprised when the next mayor of Johannesburg somehow becomes someone from ActionSA. Who knows? Don't be surprised when Herman Mashaba somehow is announced as Home Affairs Minister. Who knows? Because if the DA walks out or the DA is booted out, there are going to be fundamental changes. And those changes will include cabinet changes, because the president would now have to select some of the members of these smaller parties that are now part of the GNU to give them some positions. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting 4 years, I tell you. Let's go to your WhatsApps before we go to the headlines.
Good morning, Clement. I think it's got to a stage where the ANC must actually realize they're not in power. They need to actually start working together. They also need to grow up. We are in the predicament that we are in the predicament because of what the theft and all this other money disappearing. So put the VAT up 2%. Where's that money going to go? They're still not curving their expenditure. Their salaries from the ANC should be halved until they pay back all the money that is owed to this country. And it doesn't matter what the DA does, ActionSA, whatever, the long and the short of the story is the more money there is, the more money will be stolen. So I think people must really start thinking that the ANC must pay back something.
Clement, what worries me when I listen to many callers is it's becoming a DA versus ANC slog. To my mind, it doesn't matter whether it's DA or ANC, as long as the budget is there to look after everyone and to create jobs. If the ANC can put that on the table, I think everyone will support them. If the DA does, then I think everyone can support them. So it's not a party political thing. It's about what's the right thing for the country. Surely the listeners can see that and not make it just a DA against an ANC thing. It just, it beggars belief as to what people do and don't think and can and can't think clearly.
Yeah, thank you, Gelly, for that. I'm going to repeat this, and I say it all the time. We need to be respectful in even how we give our views, and how we make assessment of other people's views. So I'm not going to take an attitude of thinking other people think or don't think. I don't think that is progressive. I don't think that's rational. You can criticize other people's views and put your own, still in a respectful way. So that's what I'm always trying to push for, especially on this show. We need to respect each other in our engagements. I hear what you say about this is not a DA or ANC matter, but it is. It is. It is a DA versus ANC. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. The DA and the ANC are the biggest party in the government of national unity. Without either of these parties, there is no existence of the GNU. That's a reality, whether we like it or not. The reason that the ANC has had to run around speaking to smaller parties is because the DA is not agreeing with them. So, of course, it's an ANC-DA issue. If the DA had agreed to the ANC's demands, this budget would pass easily. If the DA agreed to the ANC demands or the ANC agreed to the DA's demands, it would pass easily. So let's be real, guys. Let's be real about what is the situation. The situation is there are two big parties in this GNU. The GNU can never exist without these two parties as it is right now. So if the DA comes out, then there must be other political parties that the ANC speaks to.